look forward to reading it. So I think we're going to make a start. People are still tuning in, but we're 2 minutes past now. So welcome, everybody. I don't think there's anyone new tuning in to this final workshop, but I'll just start with kind of what I say every week is that I'm R.A. Powell. I'm a children's author. Here are my 2 books so far. Odd Socks. No, sorry, that's Odd Socks. That's Odd Socks. And that's CEO, Child Executive Officer. And welcome back to the final workshop on creative writing for children. So to quickly summarize, this is a 6-week course designed to help children to improve their creative writing. In week 1, we covered characterization, which is the process of creating characters. In week 2, we covered settings, which is all about creating an environment in which our stories are told. In week 3, we covered plot, so how we can structure our stories so they flow at the right pace, so they keep the reader engaged, and then they tie everything together nicely at the end. In week 4, we talked about dialogue, so how we can develop unique and authentic voices for our characters. And then last week, we covered themes. So the themes are the kind of meanings and messages that come through our writing and our stories. If you missed any of the workshops, please feel free to check out the videos on my Facebook page or my YouTube channel. So we're now at the final workshop, and I will say it at the end, but I want to say it now as well, is just to say a massive thank you to you all. This has been one of the best things I've ever done. I've had great fun every single week in not only preparing for each of the workshops, but also kind of speaking to you directly at 3 p.m. every Wednesday. And it's been great, and I've really enjoyed it. And that's because you have tuned in and you've kind of engaged in the activities, you've asked good questions, you've got involved and really let your creativity shine through. So thank you all so much. I'll say thank you again at the end as well. So today we're going to talk about visual descriptions, which is how we can make our stories feel real to our readers. So how we can describe what is going on in our stories, because it's our job as an author to transport our readers into the world we are creating. And we can do that in a number of ways, but one of the ways we can do that is by describing to our readers what is going on in the story. So what our characters are doing and what our characters can see, where the story is taking place, what it feels like to be there. We've covered visual descriptions throughout pretty much all of the workshops so far. And so I hope you can see how all of the different pieces of the puzzle, how all of the different elements of creative writing are all, even though they're kind of distinct in their own right, but they all overlap, they're all interlinked, and they all come together. They're all part of the same family. And so I thought it would be a good idea today to talk about visual descriptions in the context of each of the workshops that we've held so far. So I'm going to cover visual descriptions in 5 segments. And I'm now going to read out the segments, and then I'll talk about more in each segment in more detail. So number 1 is characterization. Number 2 is settings. Number 3 is plot. Number 4 is dialogue. And then number 5 is themes. So we're going to talk about visual descriptions within each of those 5 areas of creative writing. So let's start with characterization. So remember, this is all about creating characters, and how we create characters. A big part of that is kind of what they look like, their physical attributes. So just imagine in the story, if we didn't tell the reader what our characters look like, they would have to use their imaginations, which is a good thing to some extent. But also we want to give the reader something, don't we? We want to tell the reader a little bit about what our characters look like. So our readers can picture and visualize our characters in their minds. And so throughout a story, we can make these references to what the character looks like. So whether that's their physical attributes, so whether they're tall, they're short, they're slim, they're big, the color of their hair, the color of their eyes, but also their presence, whether they're this kind of big personality, this big commanding presence, or whether they're quite meek and shy and quiet. So we can incorporate all of these elements when describing our characters. The good thing you can do with your 1,000 word stories, if you haven't already submitted them, is kind of just to read it back and look and examine really whether you have described your characters to the reader. So whether you give any kind of information to the reader about what your characters look like. You'll notice throughout this workshop, I will say the word balance a lot. And that's because we want to strike the right balance. We don't want to go over the top. We don't want to kind of have pages and pages of description of what our characters look like. But we can have, the occasional 1 or 2 sentences, which just kind of bring to life our characters for the reader. So let's have the first part of a 5-part activity. So please, can you come up with 2 characters? And you can write this in the comment section. Come up with 2 characters with their names. They can be human, they can be objects, they can be any animals, aliens, they can be anything. And then describe what each character looks like in a maximum of 5 words. So fantastic. So they're going to start coming through now. And while they're coming through, there's more people who've tuned in. Fantastic. I will give you a shout out as we go through towards the end. So we'll continue with the workshop. If you're watching this on YouTube after the live stream or on my Facebook page, you can take part in the activities just with a pen and paper. So remember, you can do that. So while you're doing that activity, we're going to come back to that very shortly, but I'm going to plow on with the workshop. So we've discussed now the importance of describing what our characters look like in our story. Let's talk about settings. So setting, you may remember in a story, is kind of where it takes place. So that could be a town, a village, a country, a planet, a school. It could be anywhere, and there may be many settings in our stories. And you may remember in the settings workshop when we talked about the 5 senses. So sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And using our 5 senses to describe a setting can be a great way to bring it to life for the reader. And obviously one of those senses is sight, is vision. And so we can use that to have visual descriptions in our stories. So describing what a particular location looks like in a new scene in the story. So in your stories, you may have one scene which takes place in, just say, a school, and then all of a sudden the story might move to someone's house. So you kind of want to describe those different environments to the reader. And again, we want to strike the right balance. We don't want to provide too much description, but just, again, the odd sentence or 2, just to kind of bring to life what the location looks like, will help set the scene for the reader. You may also remember in the settings workshop when we talked about other ways that we can describe settings. So that was through the weather. So the weather is a great way to add some atmosphere or mood to a story, to a particular scene in a story, or to a location. Seasonal descriptions. So, think about in the autumn when all of the trees are a beautiful kind of red and orange. You can use these descriptions to really bring your settings to life. Let's have part 2 of the activity. Fantastic. Wow, I've just looked at the comments. Lots of really great characters there. So we're going to build on the 2 characters that you've created so far. And what I would like you to do is to come up with a location, a setting, and then I would like you to describe that location in 3 words. So you may remember during the settings workshop, my location was a seaside town. And I think I described it in kind of, it was run down, it was windy, and it was cold. But you can so come up with a location where your two characters that you've created live or are based, or where the story takes place, and then describe that location in 3 words. Fantastic. So they're coming through now. Love some of these characters. Amazing. I'm not going to read one of them out because I'll feel bad on other people. So, but fantastic imaginations. And as you can see, when we've run these activities over the last 5 and 6 weeks, you know, we've done it on instinct. You know, these activities are all quite fast-paced, quick fire. They're all about instinct, about you coming up with an idea and writing it down. And we can always build on these ideas at a later date. Brilliant. So we'll come back to that activity shortly. Keep them coming through. If you're watching after the live stream on YouTube, feel free to do this on some paper with a pen. So we've talked about how we can bring our characters to life, and also the settings using visual descriptions by telling the reader what things look like, which is the kind of the basic sense of it, really. Let's talk about plot. You may remember in this workshop, in the plot workshop, when we talked about 7 milestones that commonly occur in a lot of stories. So number 1 was introduction. Number 2 was incident. Number 3 was action. Number 4 was adventure. Number 5 was setback. Number 6 was salvage. And then number 7 was finale. So these are the 7 milestones that often occur in most stories. And so by using visual descriptions throughout the entire story, through all of these different milestones, we can really build a sense of atmosphere and keep the reader up to date with kind of where the story currently is. So we take the reader on that journey with us. An obvious place to start is in the introduction. So this is where, you know, the beginning of the story, where we kind of introduce the lead character or some of the characters. We introduce the setting, kind of the world in which our characters exist. And we introduce some sense of normality, kind of what is normal life like for our characters at the beginning of the story. This is a good place, a good time in the story to go to use additional visual descriptions. So we can kind of plant those images in our readers' minds of, you know, what certain characters look like and what the location, the setting looks like. And then hopefully those images will stay with the reader, but also evolve as they read your story. So at the beginning, you know, we can go use a bit more visual description than we possibly may do later on in the story. Because later on in the story, we can just use occasional references to what our characters look like or what the setting looks like, just to kind of top up the vision, the visuals in our readers' minds. So let's build on the activity we've done so far. This is quite a difficult part of the activity, but let's see. So you've came up with 2 characters, and you've described what they look like. You've came up with a setting of where the characters live, or where they're based, or where your story takes place. Now, based on the ideas you've just came up with, what could happen in the story? So can you describe the plot in 1 sentence? What would be the headline if you were to describe this brand new story that you're creating right now, live on Facebook? What would it be? So this is not easy, so don't worry if you can't come up with anything. But this is all about using the characters we've created, using the setting we've created and the kind of visual descriptions of that to inform the plot. So again, we're kind of taking ideas from all of the new ideas we create. So more ideas generate more ideas, generate more ideas. Brilliant. Let's have a look. So they are coming through now. Excellent. Apologies if I'm freezing for some people. Really sorry about that. I'm moving on my screen, So apologies. Let's carry on. So if you can continue with that activity, fantastic. And then we'll come back to that very shortly. So let's move on to dialogue. So this workshop was pretty technical. You know, there's lots of rules when we're writing dialogue in stories that we've got to adhere to. But one of the things about dialogue that we talked about is to make sure it sounds real and authentic, and that we give our characters their own unique voice. And you may remember a technique that we talked about in dialogue, which was around kind of using body language and facial expressions to kind of, you know, make our dialogue feel more real, and to give the reader some more visual images in their mind of the characters interacting with each other. And so using body language and expression is kind of the art of describing what our characters are doing when they talk to each other. So for example, and I'm going to welcome back Tony and Jenny for the final week. Welcome back, Tony and Jenny. You know, for an example, we could, instead of saying, Jenny, I'm not happy about this, said Tony. We could say instead, Tony slumped on the sofa. Jenny, I'm not happy about this. So you see, by using the visual description, which was Tony sitting, well, slumping on the sofa, we've kind of informed the reader what the character is doing, but also we've used a visual description which kind of is in keeping with the sentiment of what Tony is about to say. So he's not happy about something, and the action that he's done is he's kind of slumped in the sofa. So they kind of match. And again, this just brings a much richer and visual passage for the dialogue to the reader. Let's try for part 4 of, wow, fantastic. Sorry, I keep blocking the comments so it doesn't distract me. But now I'm just having a look. Fantastic. Your imaginations are incredible. And I hope one of the things you can take away from these workshops is that we all have ideas. You know, we all have imaginations, and it's just about unleashing those ideas and those imaginations and writing them down. Write them down, and then you can come back at a later date and build on those ideas. So fantastic. So we're going to try, and this is, again, this is going to be quite difficult, but this is part 4 of the activity. So far, you have created 2 characters with some visual descriptions. You've created a setting with some visual descriptions. And then you've created a kind of a one-line summary of the plot. Now, I would like you to write some dialogue using visual descriptions between your 2 characters. That's not easy, but so take your time. Don't worry if you can't come up with anything, but we'll come back to that activity very shortly. So this is part 4 of the activity. You can come up with some dialogue between the 2 characters you've created using some sense of visual description. Fantastic. Hello, Isabel. Welcome back, Isabel. I've just seen Isabel pop up there on the comments feed. I'm going to give a shout out to more people who tuned in just after we started. So I'll come back to that at the end. So carry on with the activities. Remember, if you are tuning in after the live stream, you can continue these activities on with a good old-fashioned paper and pen. Right, so now we come to themes. So we've talked about using visual descriptions in our characters, in the settings we create, the plot, and the dialogue. And so we're going to conclude with themes. So you may remember last week when we talked about the kind of messages and the meanings that arise from our stories. And so some examples could be good versus evil, love, friendship, courage, bravery. There's so many different themes that we can write about or that may just kind of happen through our writing. You may also remember what I said about themes, and this is just my own personal opinion. But for me, the kind of meanings and the messages we have in our stories that we write should almost happen naturally, and we don't want to force the kind of meanings and messages. I think I gave the example last week of, we don't really want to kind of sit down and say, I would like to write a story about bravery with a love theme in it, because for me that doesn't really feel genuine and real. So the theme and the meanings and the messages from our stories should come kind of from here. They come from within, from what we believe in, our principles, our values, and kind of what we kind of think about the world around us. But we can use visual descriptions to kind of shine a light on those messages and meanings in our stories. And we can do that by describing certain things or occurrences or objects in our stories. So for example, I'm going to use a rainbow. Bearing in mind that the rainbow writing competition asks you to write a story that features a rainbow or has a rainbow theme. So I would like you to write for the final part of the activity, and this is kind of not linked directly to the first 4 parts, but I would like you to write a visual description of what a rainbow looks like. So just imagine that an alien has landed in a big spaceship in your garden or at the front of your house where you live, and the alien comes up to you and says, what does a rainbow look like? I've never seen one before. How would you describe what a rainbow looks like? And we can use a rainbow to symbolize kind of other meanings in a story. So let those come through now. Fantastic. So just looking back at the comments, lots of great dialogue there. Fantastic. Excellent. So if you can start writing your rainbow descriptions in there, that would be great. And so just on that, no doubt you will all come up with your own interpretations of what a rainbow looks like. You can describe it, you will describe it each in different ways, because you're all different and you're all unique. We all have our own special qualities, and that's important. We want those special qualities to shine through in the stories that we write. And that's, for me, is what the themes and the meanings and the messages that shine through our stories. They happen naturally because we're kind of expressing ourselves in our writing. Fantastic. So they're coming through now. So that's the final part of the activity for the final workshop. But I want you to think about all of the activities that we've done over the last 6 weeks. And, they've all been really quite quick, fast, instinct, come up with ideas on the spot right now, then build on those ideas. And it's such a good thing to do, to kind of get the creative juices flowing, just to start the process of writing a story. So you can do these activities at home with your family or friends, or do them on your own. They're just good to do because it gets your brain kind of thinking differently and thinking about new ideas and concepts. So I hope that made sense about visual descriptions. We've basically covered a lot of what we've already covered in previous workshops, but I hope it's kind of reinforced some of the messages we talked about. But adding visual descriptions really kind of brings a richness to our writing, and it helps transport the reader into the world in which we create. So don't forget to make sure that you describe to your readers kind of what is going on in the story, what things look like, what certain locations or characters look like. Using visual descriptions is a positive thing But of course, we want to strike that right balance. We don't want to go overboard. So it's all about trying to achieve a balance. So we're coming to the end of the workshop and indeed the course. And so before we finish, I would like to allow some time for any questions on the rainbow writing competition. There were quite a few questions last week, and I hope I answered a few of them. But if you do have any further questions on the rainbow writing competition, please feel free to type them in the comments box now, and then I'll come on to them in a second. Because first, I just wanted to leave you with 5 tips, which hopefully you can take away and you can think about, and they can help you to improve your writing. If you do some of these things, then you will improve. If you do all of them, then you will improve even more. So these are 5 tips. These are 5 things that I do to try and improve my own creative writing. So number 1 is don't worry about what other people think about your writing. I think I said right at the beginning of this course, creative writing should be all about you doing something just for you, for your personal pleasure, for your fun, and don't worry about what other people think. So just write for fun. Number 2 is to kind of write your ideas down. I've said that every week. I've probably said it about 3 times for this workshop. But when you get an idea, pops into your head, get it down on paper, and then it's there, it's done, and you can come back to it later. So always make notes, always write little ideas down. It doesn't matter if it's a good idea or a bad idea. It's just kind of taking information from here and putting it down onto paper. Number 3 is to practice. So, practice, practice, practice. So the more you write, the better you will get. And this links back to number 1, which is to kind of write for fun. Because if you write for fun and you enjoy writing, you will write more, you will practice more. And if you practice more, you will get better. So it all starts really with just writing for fun, for your own personal satisfaction. And if you do that, then you will do it more, and then you will get better. Number 4 is to read books. I'm sure you all read lots of books, but reading books is a great way to be inspired, to get ideas, to kind of look at how other authors, their own styles, and you can take little bits of different authors' styles and incorporate those into your own. But just reading in general is such a great way to improve your own creative writing. And then number 5, this might sound a bit strange, but it's to kind of observe and listen to the world around us. It's so easy, just say you're in a queue in the supermarket, standing 2 meters apart, of course, at this present time, or you're in the GP, you're going to see the doctor and you're sat in the waiting room. It's quite easy for us to, if you're old enough to have a smartphone, then you may well be looking at your smartphone. But it's quite easy to not look and listen to what's happening around us, even in kind of, boring environments like a doctor's waiting room, because we never know who or what is around us. And we can take ideas, we can take inspiration from the people and the environment around us. So, kind of listen to conversations when you're in, the supermarket or you're back at school, just be aware of what's going on. And this is where, again, we take inspiration from, because our writing is all part of our own kind of worldview and our experiences. So just by being alert and listening and observing to how people interact and talk and what they say, and strange things that can happen if you're walking down the street, we can take inspiration from that. So thank you so much. Thank you all. I'm just reading these queries and comments. Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I'm going to miss you all, but I think I will be back with some other activities, and we will do. If you've got any suggestions, if you've got any ideas or anything that you think would be beneficial, I've just seen something actually, which is a really good idea. To do a writing class for older children. Thank you, Millie. So we can definitely think. I can definitely think about that and do something. So thank you, Millie. I will think about that, and then I will put something on Facebook about that. But thank you all so much. Let's just look at some final questions. So the deadline is for the Rainbow Writing Competition is next Wednesday, the 6th of May. I've already received quite a few now, so thank you all to those of you who have submitted. But the deadline is next Wednesday, the 6th of May. So if you could submit them by then, that would be fantastic. And then another question there is, when will I announce the winners of the competition? So I will announce them, I believe it's on Wednesday, it's the last Wednesday of, let me just check the dates. It's the last Wednesday of May. So it is Wednesday, the 27th of May. And I will announce the winners live on Facebook. So that will be really exciting. But thank you all so much. Let's just have a look at the questions before I go. Brilliant. Thank you all very much. Take care, stay safe, and look forward to receiving your stories for the Rainbow Writing Competition. Let me know if you have any questions on that, but take care, stay safe, and see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.